Before I get into, I guess I better do that at the same time. Okay, call the meeting to order. This is meeting number 124 of the Standing Committee on International Trade. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, September 16th, 2024, the committee is resuming its study of Canadian women and international trade. Before I introduce the witnesses, I just have to ask just to mention to the committee that we have a photographer booked for November 4th, which is Monday's meeting. If that's okay with everybody, so come looking as great as you always look. And we'll have a...
to smile too?
Well, it helps, but we'll have a photo so that it's something that's usually done once a year, so we'll have that done. And on November 4th, which is Monday, we have the softwood lumber study. November 6th will be draft report consideration of the supply chain study and the seafood study. And we have two informal meeting requests that the clerk sent out to all members of the committee for your thoughts. From NASCO, which is North American Strategy for a Competitive Network, is visiting Ottawa. They've asked to meet with us for an hour on November 18th. And there's a delegation from Colombia that has asked to meet with the committee on November 20th for an hour. Is that okay with the committee if we have them come to the committee for the second hour of November 18th and the second hour November 20th?
Chair, if
Yes.
I may.
Yes.
Again, I think as we mentioned to the team from a delegation from Ecuador, my thing is that the committee time is limited. If it is of strategic value for the committee in the near to medium term, I think then we should give the committee hours. If not, there can be an informal meeting elsewhere.
What's the feeling of the committee? Okay. Sabir Savar Tremblay.
Personnellement, moi, je suis d'accord pour qu'on...
Personally, I would be in agreement that they meet with us. It's not every day that we have this opportunity, despite the subjects that we have to deal with. I think that this would be a good opportunity to get into some interesting topics. And so I think it would only make sense to do so if they're going to be here.
Mr. Deschamps.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues that if they're going to be present here, we've heard that they have important issues if they're requesting to maybe to be meeting with us, and so I'd say it's quite imperative. Of course, I do take consideration of Mr. Arias' concerns about timing, and so Madam Chair, I'd leave it to you in your recommendation perhaps to suggest whether or not we have time. I'd imagine, since you're posing the question, that we would have time.
It's been worked into the calendar with the possibly with the clerk if the committee wants to go forward.
Very good, very good.
Yes, yeah, Madam Clerk, I think we agree that you have a day to manage. You know that the reports we have. If you feel that we're going to be here anyhow and we can fit this group in if they're here, then I think we give that to you. Obviously, we wouldn't want to take away from a day or any future days where we have important meetings. But if that's a day you can fill, why not? Let's do it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will go forward if the calendar avails itself, as suggested by the clerk. We will go forward with on the second hour. We'll have the first hour of our regular business, and we will allow them the second hour if we feel a whole hour is necessary. Yes.
Madam Chair, I apologize, but I just want to ask now because I'm not aware of who is the group that's making this request.
NASCO, which is North American Strategy for Competitiveness Network.
We're going to meet with them anyhow.
Okay.
Okay, we all right? Okay. So, to our witnesses, apologies for a few minutes of a delay. We have with us today Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, Christine Nakamura, Vice President, Central Canada Office by video conference, and Invest Ottawa, Sonia Shorey, President and Chief Executive Officer, both by video conference. We welcome you both to the committee. We will start with opening remarks and then proceed with rounds of questions. You have up to 5 minutes. Ms. Nakamura, would you like to start, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Asia Pacific Foundation is an independent, not-for-profit organization dedicated to strengthening ties with Asia through research, education, and convening activities to facilitate connections between Canadians and counterparts in the Indo-Pacific. Studies have shown that advancing gender equality and increasing women's economic engagement in Canada could potentially add $150 billion in incremental GDP by 2026. This projection prompted our team to see how our expertise on Asia could contribute to intensifying women's participation in the economy, and particularly those who lead small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. In 2017, SMEs accounted for about 99.8% of all employer businesses in Canada. However, only 15.6% of the total were majority women-owned, and of these, only 11.1% exported. To help grow the number of women SMEs who export, we launched the Women's Business Mission Series to Asia in 2019 to facilitate introductions of Canadian women entrepreneurs to potential business partners in burgeoning markets of Asia. From 2017 to 18, we spoke to over 300 women in business across Canada who told us that they lacked the confidence to tackle culturally diverse and unknown markets of Asia. They did, however, conclude that if introductions facilitated through trade missions dedicated to women could be arranged by agents experienced in navigating these markets, they would attempt market entry. So in spring 2019, we led a pilot mission to Japan with women entrepreneurs in health tech who specialized in elder care to address needs of Japan's aged society. Results included NDAs and MOUs to collaborate on R&D and agreements for product localization and distribution. Discussions are still underway, which is a good indication that there will be more outcomes in the future. In summer 2019, we were selected to receive funding from the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund, enabling us to lead another 6 successive missions to key markets in the Indo-Pacific from 2020 to 2023. As expected, our 2-person missions after COVID generated majority of the outcomes so far, but soon we will embark on our 8th mission to Taiwan and Vietnam. With West funding, we also created the Canadian Women's International Network, or CanWin, a spin-off of our trade missions to further support women SMEs. CanWin offers a powerful network of global connections that provide necessary supports to women in international trade. This year, on Canada's National Indigenous Peoples Day, we hosted CanWin's inaugural Global Summit in Toronto, bringing together over 150 women and gender-diverse participants from across Canada and 7 economies in the Indo-Pacific to network and share best practices. We featured a special panel of Indigenous business leaders from member economies of the Indigenous Peoples Economic and Trade Cooperation Arrangement, or IPETCA. We also spotlighted award-winning next-generation entrepreneurs from Canada and staged a pitch competition for 5 talented Canadian finalists in front of an international jury of investors. To date, 212 women and gender-diverse participants, including business leaders and thought leaders, participated in our 7 missions, highlighting Canada's rich cultural and regional diversity. 740 tailored business-to-business meetings were curated, and almost 4,500 women and male allies engaged in our activities across Canada and Asia to advance gender economic empowerment. Our trade mission series has generated a conservative estimate of about Canadian $21.5 million in sales and investments as of August 2024, and there are close to 70 business discussions in progress. The funding has enabled us to reach out to underrepresented groups of entrepreneurs and futurepreneurs, including those who are Indigenous women of color, and LGBTQ+, to inform of the opportunities offered by Asian markets to ensure inclusive representation on our delegations. Our outreach efforts also connected us to many organizations across Canada that support women's entrepreneurship, resulting in a more coordinated approach to helping women founders. Our results are only a small sampling of what is attainable with curated support for exporting women SMEs. With sustained investment, women will continue to drive Canada's economic growth in the years to come. So in closing, I'd like to make several recommendations here. 1, to continue efforts to weave together independently run supports for women founders to export. 2, provide supports not only to early stage startups, but later stage startups because there's a gap, and to increase export growth. And 3, follow company growth for years, not just once, because to capture accurate growth metrics, you need to continue. It takes a while for results to come out. And lastly, expand the reach of women-focused supports across associations and chambers of intersectional minority groups. So I'll stop there, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very much. Ms. Shorey, up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all members of the committee for the opportunity to share the vision, progress, and lessons learned from Invest Ottawa, your lead economic development agency here in Canada's capital, and all the partners we're honored to collaborate with. Together as an ecosystem, we're committed to empowering women founders, CEOs, and business owners from every single walk of life to reach international markets and thrive globally. If you see her, you can be her. In Ottawa, we're privileged to collaborate with remarkable women founders who serve as powerful role models in Canada and for the world. Elizabeth Ordette-Bodeau, founder and CEO of Wellbe, transforming senior care. Alita Burke, co-founder of The Grocer, addressing food security and sustainability. Erin Kelly, CEO and founder of Advanced Symbolics, enabling AI decision-making. Sarah Sedgman, founder of Learn Experts, enabling a revolution in the training sector. And Heather Ward, CEO of Hyperion Global, a carbon technology capture company. These leaders are creating a triple bottom line: economic, social, and environmental impact, and advancing UN sustainability goals. At Invest Ottawa, when we say women, we include all individuals who identify as women, including women of color, transgender women, those with gender diverse identities. These women have faced systemic barriers, and together with partners like CIIT and the Capital Angel Network and so many others, we're committed to prioritizing equity, access, and inclusion. Our programs, we are working hard to ensure everyone who accesses our support, together with our partners, feels welcomed and empowered. Since 2017, our strategy has addressed systemic challenges facing women entrepreneurs, particularly around capital and global market access. The data speaks volumes. Women own fewer than 16% of Canadian businesses. Yet, women-founded companies drive significant economic, social, and environmental value. Our ecosystem is dedicated to amplifying and enabling this impact. In 2018, at Invest Ottawa, we created a Women Founders and Owners subcommittee of our board with leaders from diverse backgrounds. We also contributed to the development of a Women Founders and Owners strategy, a roadmap to make Ottawa the best city globally for women to launch, grow, and scale impactful global companies. Among our goals, to establish Ottawa's first women $100 million company and inspire a pipeline of many more. Our strategy revolves around 4 key thrusts: to promote, educate, equip, and connect. This strategy has increased women's participations in our program significantly over the last 6 years. In our Invest Ottawa Scale-Up program alone, 77% of the technology companies generating $500 to $2 million minimum in annual recurring revenue now have at least one woman founder, co-founder, or senior executive, up from single digits. And many of these companies are now exporting globally. Investment remains a key challenge for women founders. On planet Earth, only 2.2% of venture capital in the first half of 24 went to women sole founders. Mixed founder teams fare slightly better, but the disparity is clear. And for women founders from marginalized groups, venture capital is less than 1%. It's critical to break these barriers for our economy and society. Studies consistently show women-founded companies generate higher revenue per dollar invested, underscoring the tangible value and resilience they bring to this market. In 2020, Invest Ottawa and the Capital Angel Network, led by Jennifer Francis, Julia Elvidge, and I, created CIIT, an investment readiness bootcamp that is now national, addressing this challenge head on. It enables more women to get funded, and it gets more women investing. When more women are investing, more women get funded. Research demonstrates that. Since its inception, CIIT has helped to catalyze more than $25 million in follow-on funding for 50 participating women founders, preparing them to attract capital and navigate the complexities of global expansion. Join us to see our 5th cohort in action at our CIIT Pitch competition on November 12th here in Ottawa. And big applause to our Capital Angel Network partners, where women now comprise 30% of investor membership, a significant increase over years past. We've also launched International Women's Month, another key initiative uniting 50 partners annually from within and beyond our region across the country and around the world. It's a long-term driver for sustainable change, creating a critical mass of successful women leaders, not just here in Ottawa, but enabling us to serve as role models to inspire others. These initiatives we are championing directly address so many of these challenges, but more is needed. We can truly make Ottawa the best city and Canada the best country for women to launch, scale, and lead companies that fuel our economy and change our world for the better. Collaboration is crucial. Reports estimate it will take 131 years to close the gender gap. We need everyone working together. We invite all people, organizations, and sectors to join us. Our work is just beginning. We have a long way to go. I truly believe that with intention, collaboration, and commitment with all the partners across this country and so many leaders, Canada can lead the world and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you for our witnesses for attending today. It's really great to have you here in this important study. Ms. Shori, I will start with you. And thank you for representing all the entrepreneurs in Invest Ottawa, a very important organization. With your extensive background in policy advocacy and government relations, how do you see federal taxation policies affecting Canadian women entrepreneurs involved in international trade, particularly when it comes to market access?
When we think about taxation, we don't think about it in isolation. We think about the entire business environment, all of the policies and how they work together and are designed to be inclusive, to encourage and break down barriers. So we would see things such as the funding available, all of the supports available, taxation, procurement from our domestic side, all working together as a suite. The more that we can do to encourage all founders, including women founders and marginalized founders, to think big, be bold, pursue big, bold dreams, certainly the more that we can do together to create the kind of environment that makes it very lucrative to stay, to grow roots, deep roots here. Our Scale Up program is all about that, is about how we can encourage more founders to anchor here, to take great roots and continue building and scaling, not to leave for the US, where certainly there are some very distinct advantages. We are working hard to collaborate with all levels of government, industry, and our founder community to encourage them to look broadly at everything we have in our policy environment. And here in Canada, we are distinct. Our culture has many, many critical advantages, and we have a quality of life that is second to none. When we talk to founders, including women founders, those considerations are absolutely critical. An environment where you can raise children and grow a company that thrive, that is safe, that is encouraging, where you can get the quality of life that you deserve. Everything operates as a suite. I don't see anything operating in isolation.
Fantastic. And I loved your quote. You said if there are more women entrepreneurs investing in women entrepreneurial businesses, there'll be more women entrepreneurs getting invested in. Part of the solution to that we see is open banking in Canada. The Americans are closer than we are right now. They're close to getting some compliance, and they have 4,400 banks. Part of that would be seeing open banking and some of those applications go into venture capitalism, where right now we have $6 billion of venture capital funding in Canada. To your point, only 2.2% of that worldwide goes into female-led entrepreneurship or enterprises. And the Americans have $200 billion. And so we see that we're losing perhaps an advantage by having open banking implemented quickly in Canada to make sure that we can take that advantage and hopefully see more female-led venture capital groups invest in more female-led businesses. Would you see that as an advantage from your standpoint?
Again, I think everything works together as a suite. I think we need to create pathways for more women angels. It's the entire cycle of venture capital from the earliest stages right up through the venture capital. I think certainly there are many advantages to be had, but we need to inspire more women to pursue that career path. And that starts very, very early, and enabling more women to become educated about the opportunity and the ability to invest. There are many organizations that we collaborate with across this country. The Capital Angel Network and SheBoot are anchored here in Ottawa, but together with BDC Thrive Venture Capital Fund, Stand Up Ventures, Phoenix Fire, the Firehood, Women's Equity Lab, the 51, Sandpiper Ventures, all of those organizations are leading by example with women who are bringing new women investors into that pipeline and creating the inspiration that enables them to see themselves as investors, which I see as one of the anchor challenges. Before we think about all of those other advantages, we have to equip women to be able to see themselves in those roles. We have to create pathways and make the opportunity something that's possible.
Thank you. And Mrs. Nakamura, you did talk also about second stage scale up, so getting some more funding for acceleration, right? Getting from the startup stage to the growth stage where we can see good IP generation and development commercialization. Can you please tell me about what your ideas would be to see more acceleration of those businesses that are female-led. How do we really put that emphasis onto those businesses, and how does that relate to getting more of those businesses ready for international trade?
Thank you very much for that question. As I mentioned, the project that we're doing is primarily to introduce women entrepreneurs to growth markets in Asia. Because of our foundation, we are focused on the Asia Pacific. And so we know that the thriving markets of Southeast Asia in particular as a bloc, there's tons of opportunities for women entrepreneurs. The ones that we've been helping are primarily in health tech, technology, women in tech, and health tech, ICT, clean technology. Those three areas, those three sectors are the main ones that we've been able to introduce to growth markets in Asia. And quite frankly, the opportunities in Asia, if we didn't talk to these women and start this project, a lot of women entrepreneurs wouldn't even think to try to access or do market entry in those areas. And this is why we're doing this project, because the ones that we've taken in person, as I mentioned, the 2 in-person missions we've conducted so far, it's already resulted in almost $22 million worth of deals. And that is, something that they wouldn't have got if they were here in Canada. But that's one thing. But I can tell you that there's lots of non-dilutive early stage funding in Canada, as I mentioned, but when they get to the Series A or Series B, they have a lot of trouble. They have to look outside of Canada. So this is something that we really have to, as a group, work together to try to improve that situation. And another project that we're working on is an investor session. We've been networking with investors throughout Asia. And in February 2024, at the Canada and Asia Conference in Singapore that we held, we brought together 40 investors throughout Asia to come together as a group. We pitched 5 women entrepreneurs from Canada, but we also want to do B2Bs with these investors, with Canadian VCs, equity funds, angel investors, because they're interested in investing in Canadian venture capital or investment funds. So I think that will help also to get more opportunities for the Canadian women entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much. On Ms. Fortier for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to both of you of being here today. And I'm glad to see that we have Sonia Shorey here from Invest Ottawa, someone I've worked with in the past and still collaborate as the Member of Parliament for Ottawa-Vanier. The work that Invest Ottawa is doing, I think, is a game changer for our community. And I also want to thank Christine Nakamura for being here today. I'm glad to meet you, and I'm sure you're a leader also in what you do. In 2018, the Government of Canada established the Women Entrepreneurship Fund and allocated $20 million in the federal budget to finance more than 200 projects, and then made an additional $10 million, including $2.5 million for Indigenous women entrepreneurs to help fund approximately 100 projects. It has been a fund that did give the opportunity for women entrepreneurs and their businesses to receive a valued of approximately $7 billion. So I want to talk about the women entrepreneurship strategy. And first of all, are you aware of it? Second, what is working and what is not working? And how can the government look at keeping what's working and maybe looking at what needs to be done? So this is where I'm hoping that you can share with us how this Women Entrepreneurship Fund is supporting women in business. I'll start with Sonia and then Christine.
Excellent. So certainly very aware the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy have collaborated with many organizations on several shared goals, several projects. I think one of the most important things in Canada is the power of critical mass collaboration. Individuals, individual communities or organizations, for all of their best efforts and the difference that certainly every individual and every step makes, the harnessing of all of our collaboration together, all of the resources, the learnings, the opportunities. It's not just one project that will help to drive this kind of dial with 131 years to parity. It's the consistent collaboration, sharing of lessons learned, harnessing the power of the Canadian and the global network so that it's not limited to a single point of contact, a single project, but that it's something that we invest in continuously, creating new avenues, new opportunities together. When I look at some of the women that I identified in the opening of my speech, they have benefited from the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, from organizations like Futurepreneur, Invest Ottawa, the Capital Angel Network, and so many others, likely including the one that Christine represents. Depending upon the target markets that you're looking at, the specific sectors, the challenges can be very different. And when we look at the period that you described, MP Forche, you think about the pandemic and the disproportionate impact the pandemic had on women. It was something that was devastating to many businesses. You had many women founders who were managing small children, elder care, health issues in the home while trying to fundraise and get access to these global markets. So consistent, continuous effort, sharing of lessons learned, powerful sharing of those networks so that we're creating dozens and multiples of opportunities and not just one. That's what I would encourage to build upon from the Women Founders and Owners Strategy.
Oh, thank you very much. And Madame Nakamura, would you have a response to that question also?
Absolutely. Without the funding, we are a proud recipient of the West funding, and I have to thank the Government of Canada for seeing the value in our project. But without that funding, we wouldn't have been able to reach out to the many, many organizations, standalone organizations throughout Canada who are helping in their own way to support women entrepreneurs. But now we've met these people out with the funding. We've been able to bring them together, and we're working as a team as much as possible. I mean, some places are very remote and difficult to get to. We would have never got there. We did a roundtable specifically for women, Indigenous women entrepreneurs in Yukon, for example. We brought together 25 Indigenous women entrepreneurs, and one of them succeeded in competing and getting onto one of our delegations to South Korea and Thailand, and she's found partners for her green hydrogen technology in South Korea, for example. And as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, for the amount of money that we've received, we've already helped women entrepreneurs achieve $21.5 million in deals, and there's 70 negotiations ongoing right now. We still have stories, outcomes coming out of our 2019 pilot trade mission to Japan, for example. So without the funding from West, we couldn't have done this. And in fact, we've been able to, as I said, reach out to so many different minority groups. And we've had Indigenous women, women of color, women who identify as women, who are from the LGBTQ plus community. We have very diverse delegations, but they've been stellar. So without that funding, we couldn't have made this happen.
Thank you very much.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Well, actually, for the last 30 seconds, I would simply say that this is a study that we want to make sure we have recommendations. And as you hear the conversation we're having today, and you might, with the questions we're asking, have more ideas afterwards. If you would like to submit other recommendations on what we should be working on and maybe what we should be not doing, sometimes it's good to have both. That is something that I believe in this study. We want to make sure to increase the participation of women. We're at 16%. We want to increase to much, much more. And I think that you understand exactly where we're going. So please don't hesitate to submit more recommendations to the committee.
Okay, thank you very
Madame
much.
Fortier.
Okay, not at this moment, Mrs. Fortier. So I gave her the 30 seconds she had left and opened the door for another whole session. On to Monsieur Savard-Tremblay for 6 minutes.
Merci,
please.
Madame la Présidente. Merci à nos deux témoins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our two witnesses. On October 7th, witnesses suggested that we create a tax incentive to encourage large companies to do their procurement with women-led and women-owned businesses, and there's something similar in the U.S. They use quotas. So my question is for both witnesses. Do you think that this would be a good path to follow to help women entrepreneurs?
I'm happy to begin. Certainly, we have done a lot of work with respect to our collaborators in Canada on understanding better the attributes of the SBIR program in the United States. We have put forward a series of recommendations that would certainly encourage the concept of thresholds with proper terms and conditions that create new avenues for accessibility, that encourage risk-taking within the government of Canada and other governments as well, to encourage that pathway, not simply having the opportunity to demonstrate new technologies that are founded by women or products founded by women, but to have a pathway to actual procurement. One of the best ways that we have seen this work at one of our sites, hosted by Invest Ottawa, supported by all 3 levels of government and 5 multinationals, and leveraged by dozens and dozens of startups, scale-ups, and SMEs, is AreaX.O, where we actually bring Transport Canada together with small to medium-sized companies, startups, scale-ups, including women in tech, and we do pilot tests of different technologies that advance their commercialization, getting them closer to market with feedback from our regulator in this country, so that not only are they getting exposure, a first customer, and the opportunity to take in all kinds of insights from those partners and potential customers on that project, which is collaborative, serving a particular challenge or doing a particular task, a performance that's required for a certain type of implementation to keep city streets safe, vulnerable road users safe, while things like connected and autonomous vehicles, low-speed automated shuttles, drones, and other technologies are implemented in novel ways, together with the Government of Canada, and encouraging that opportunity to create greater pathways as an emergence and an outcome from those projects would be very helpful. Creating thresholds similar to what we have in the SBIR in the United States is something that we are certainly recommending. We have put forth a paper on it and are meeting with CIIT on it next week. Would be very delighted to share that with you. It certainly encompasses a carve-out for women founders and marginalized founders to encourage breaking down those barriers to create more opportunity for those that would otherwise not have that potential.
Madame Nakamura.
Ms. Nakamura?
Je m'excuse, the
Sorry.
isn't coming into my headphones. I didn't hear it in the translation. Je m'excuse.
What was the problem?
She just needs to select language at the bottom.
Ms. Nakamura, there's at the bottom of the screen, you can select language. Did we put that on hold?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to
I'm
just...
so sorry, I missed the question.
Okay.
Alors, je la repose.
Should I ask the question again? Yes. So I mentioned that we have heard from witnesses that shared the concept of creating a tax incentive to encourage large companies to do their procurement with women-owned or women-led companies. And something similar is done in the US. They use quotas. Do you think that this would be a good path to follow?
To be frank, because we were dealing with mainly startups and smaller companies, some of them are pre-revenue, a majority are revenue-making companies, the tax issue has not come into play too much as yet. These are women founders that we're trying to, that are raising funds right now. In the up to the Series A level. So there has not been much chatter or much discussion with our groups on the tax incentives. But I think as the companies scale, there will be much more focus coming forward.
Parfait. Est-ce que le Canada...
So should Canada, to create change, focus more on women entrepreneurs who are exporting or who would like to get into international trade? What suggestions would you have for representatives around the negotiation table, for example, for the CUSMA review in 2025? What should we do to encourage women-led businesses to export? And the question is for all witnesses.
Do you want me to start? Okay, thank you. I think that that is why our team is focused on increasing the number of women to export, because while the businesses may thrive in Canada, our population is very small in comparison to some of the larger populations, even south of the border. Definitely, there's a huge market down there, but as well in other parts of the world. And I think for companies who want to grow, they have to think big, which means export. And so that is what our team is doing, is to encourage women, talk about the markets. We're focused on Asia, but we talk about the markets and what the potential these markets offer to women who have viable products or services that match and align with the markets that we are introducing them to. So indeed, I think it's very, very important to get more women interested in exporting if they're at the stage of being international market ready.
I would certainly build on that and echo that when I think about how we have worked together with the Capital Angel Network at Invest Ottawa to encourage and help to equip women founders to be investment ready through SheBoot, and have seen that $25 million in follow-on investment. That includes the period during the pandemic. And I have to tell you that number is actually higher. It's just we're not permitted to share under NDA. If we can create similar programs that look at export readiness for companies out there at the appropriate stage, they have scaled, and we certainly have those companies in our region being led by women, that we create curated programs with industry experts, international trade exports, including organizations like Christine's, that we create that collaboration and a program that specifically brings that lens. So all training, education, and supports are specifically around that targeted goal of export readiness. When I think about what we've done with our community Invest Ottawa, we have overhauled end-to-end in the last 6 years every single step in our venture development program. It has led to a significant increase in the number of women founders and diverse women founders. In the SheBoot program, similarly, 50% of those women founders are from diverse backgrounds. That is self-selected, self-identified. That is with intention. If you don't bring intention and put the right investment, resources, and experts surrounding them with that single goal, then it becomes diluted. I believe this type of focus in any accelerator, incubator, innovation hub, all of these organizations that bring this expertise working together can deliver it. That is exactly how we built SheBoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being present with us today in this important study. I wasn't present in the last 2 meetings on this topic, and so I am pleased to know that Ms. Nakamura, you mentioned some of the intersectional approaches that are necessary to addressing this work in its full potential. Black and Indigenous women, in particular women of color, face extraordinary barriers, and I was really I welcomed your testimony this morning, or sorry, today, in your opening remarks around some of the work to see those persons included in your work more recently with your gathering on National Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm curious to know, of course, how the challenges of women of color are being met by organizations through this fund. This is something that I've actually had an opportunity, when I was given notice about this fund, to canvass some women businesses in Edmonton and in Alberta. And to be very frank, very few had heard about it. We have a lot of Indigenous, particularly Indigenous and Black women-owned businesses who've never heard at all about the Women Entrepreneurship Fund. It seems like it could be, maybe this is a bias from coming from Western Canada, that this is really focused in many ways in particular urban areas and hasn't really penetrated the areas outside of urban centers, particularly for women businesses that are in the far north or in rural areas. I was pleased to hear, Ms. Nakamura, you made a comment about a representative from the Yukon. And so I just wanted to offer that up at the very outset of this. And I want to speak for the first bit of our discussion today on the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy in its totality. It was asked by my colleague, Ms. Fortier, on some of this, but put simply, is the program enough to address the gender imbalance in Canadian businesses, and in particular as it relates to Black or Indigenous or people of color owned businesses? Ms. Nakamura, please.
Yes, I wanted to mention that despite the pandemic, since the WES funding was launched, the number of majority women-owned companies have increased to 18.4% from 15.6%. in 2017. So I think that the West funding has had some impact with the various groups being funded to do activities that they would normally not have been able to do. So I think it definitely is making a difference, despite the fact there were companies that went, that went bankrupt or declined during the COVID period. The ones that scaled, I know of many companies that actually took off during the pandemic because of the nature of their business. So, in fact, 2.8% doesn't seem like a whole lot, but that's still a significant increase to the number of women pre-pandemic.
And I think just to get your feedback on this, just to square the circle on that question, is it enough support, or should there be an allocation of further money?
Absolutely.
Simply put,
and
yes.
That's why in my closing statement, as I said, we need to continue with this. This is just a small sampling that I'm providing from our project, but I'd like to hear from all the others. And the Women's Knowledge Hub at TMU, at the Diversity Institute, they have all those the data. They've been collecting data from all the recipients of the WES funding. So I think it's important to look at those and research those to see what the value add is. And I think that if we do stop the funding, all the work that's been done over the last 5 years with the WES funding is going to go to by the wayside. So we have to continue with it.
Of course. And I have another question here. I know we're running quick of time here. And Madam Chair, I think I can squeeze this in here. In recent years, the Canadian trade agreements, including CUSMA, the Canada-Ukraine agreement, the TPP, and the CITA agreement, have all included gender-related provisions. What sort of impact, if any, have you seen from these provisions, and can they be strengthened?
Sonia, do you want to go? Or
I'm going to invite you to go because it
Okay.
is so specific to
I'll
trade
just
agreements.
make-
I do have a comment on the previous question.
Okay. I just want to say that while they are not binding, the provisions that I believe they're in there,
That's correct.
including the CPTPP, I think that most economies are starting to embrace the fact that we have to gender mainstream. And, as I said, I'm leading a mission to Taiwan and Vietnam in 3 weeks. And Vietnam has really taken off. They're a partner, they're a signatory to the CPTPP. And they are looking at different ways of enhancing women entrepreneurs in their country as well. Taiwan is not a member of CPTPP, but Taiwan is probably the most inclusive economy in the Indo-Pacific. From the political level to the business level, there are women leaders everywhere. And that's the reason why I'm leading a trade mission there.
You have 45 seconds remaining.
Thank you very much. I don't think it's enough for another question, but perhaps Ms. Shorey,
Ms.
just to that
Shorey.
first question.
Excellent. So I just want to say the continued investment, collaboration is absolutely critical. We have made meaningful progress. It is too slow and it is not enough. And without sustained effort, collaboration, investment, and intention, particularly for women from marginalized communities, as I shared in my opening remarks, we look at women from all identities, all intersections of identity. One of the lessons learned from those who have lived experience is to meet women founders from marginalized communities where they are at. That takes funds to get out into the communities, to identify pockets of women founders that have that potential, and to do that in a way that's conducive with their culture, with their background, where they feel safe. And that's something that we have taken steps to do. In many cases, the investment does not exist to do that. Everyone is putting all of the resources, all of the passion and heart that we have in this country. Those who are invested in this goal do this together, but it takes support to do it systemically, to scale it, and to make the kind of impact and difference that we all strive to. Some of the organizations we've collaborated with include Adawe Indigenous Business Hub here in the capital, Powwow Pitch, Changemaker, which serves Black entrepreneurs. There are so many diverse communities where founders feel safe. It's getting out into those communities, pulling them in, giving them a sense of belonging. And without intention and funds to do that, it's impossible.
Thank
So
you, Ms.
for
Shorey.
all the
On to Mr.
investment.
Baldinelli for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your excellent presentations today. I'm going to first go with Mrs. Nakamura, and thank you for your presentation and your suggestions and recommendations. The first one, I didn't get a chance to get it all written down, but you had talked about weaving together a suite of programs to assist women founder businesses, and I was wondering if you could just expand on that. I mean, is it the initial trade missions, or is there something that follow up? I mean, fantastic job in doing those trade missions. You talked about $21 million in deals, but what further can be done once those deals have been started? But who assists with the regulatory and the policy issues that those women founder businesses then, once they're on the ground, have to take on and be challenged with?
So I'm going to start by saying pre-mission, all the delegates, our trade missions, the women have to apply and compete to get on our trade missions because we cover their expenses to go on the trade mission. So it's a Canada-wide competition to apply for, and we set up a jury to select the most viable, the companies that we think will align with the commercial demands of the destination economy. So these women will get together. We select them several months before we leave. We provide them pre-mission training. And this is something we've created a template because we heard from those 300 women during our roundtables on the needs and how to convince them to go abroad and export. And so we provide pre-mission training, market access training, market intelligence training, business and cultural protocols. We train them on we will do some research and provide their competitors in market, for example. So all these things that we do in preparation is partly to get them studying too, because the onus is upon them also to better prepare themselves, because unless you're market ready, you're not going to do anything when you get over there, right? So we bring in the diplomats, the Trade Commissioner Service. We work very closely with the Trade Commissioner Service in Canada as well as in the missions abroad to give them briefings on what to expect. And then we hire B2B service providers to interview the women, find out exactly what it is that they want to do in market, and then they go on and do their Rolodex calls to make sure that the B2Bs are going to amount to something or they have good potential. So the training is absolutely necessary. And when they come back, we've set up a Slack network of all these women. They chatter on the thing and train each other on regulatory problems. Somebody's faced this. Don't get into this trouble because we ran into this problem. We've got a network on Slack that all of the women that we've taken abroad communicate with and to train each other. So that camaraderie is also invaluable to what has come out, not just the business partners in market. It's amongst themselves because they would have never met each other unless they went on the trade mission and spent a week together studying each other, learning about each other's businesses and ways to help each other.
Shori now. You talked about the difficulties with regards to venture capital for women founder businesses. So how is it that the federal government can assist women-led owned businesses and entrepreneurs to commercialize their products and gain proper market access?
I'm very grateful for that question. At Invest Ottawa, we have worked carefully and closely with a host of different women founders from different walks of life to better understand their needs, the types of technologies, products that they are developing, what type of commercialization requirements they have. In certain cases, there are very unique capabilities, such as those that exist at AREX.O for hardware-based or smart mobility-oriented technologies, breaking down those barriers, creating access to the host of different types of facilities, experts, access to capitals, including programs such as SheBoot that enable the specific training to be investment ready. There are so many women founders that have incredible innovations and they don't know how to scale. They don't know how to commercialize. Here in the capital, we're very proud that we have come together as a community with a host of different organizations, including our post-secondaries, all three levels of government, to tackle this challenge in a very collaborative way. We would do a call every year to other communities across Canada, look to share our lessons learned to determine how every community can harness those specific resources, capabilities, and experts with intention in their community. It's a choice. With the funding that is going into a host of different organizations, creating requirements for a particular percentage and for particular goals and target outcomes to be addressed for women founders and marginalized founders would go a very long way. Again, that takes investment so that you can bring in the right expertise to work with women founders in a way that's conducive to the way they learn, the way they commercialize, the way they export. It is different. The access, we talked earlier about tax policy and open banking, the more avenues that we have available to support women, often they will not even look to go and specifically get the type of investment that would come from a VC because they're looking to see how much equity they can keep. We're a bootstrap capital. How do I do it with that bootstrap
Sorry to
mentality?
interrupt, Ms. Shorey. Thank you, but we have lots of questions yet. Mr. Arya for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair, as the former member of Invest Ottawa, it's my pleasure to welcome Sonia Shorey to our committee. I was on this board of this economic development agency till I decided to enter politics. Since we came to power in 2015, there's been a dramatic increase in number of women in the top management positions in the Canadian corporate sector. Not just we showed the path with a gender-balanced cabinet, but we also brought in Bill C-25, where we asked the Canadian corporate sector in their annual statement to stakeholders to explicitly state their diversity policy. And that, I think, stimulated the participation of more women in the corporate sector. For example, today, the 27% of the board members of the Canadian corporate sector are women, which is up from 11% in 2014. Today, 89% of the boards have at least one woman compared to 49% in 2014. We have 36% of the board which has got 3 or more women on their board compared to 8% in 2014. Invest Ottawa, I think majority, at least 50% of the board members are women, and I think the number of employees at Invest Ottawa, the women are in majority, which is a good thing. Ms. Shorey, I'll come back to you. I just have a quick questions to Ms. Nakamura. Ms. Nakamura, you said that the women-owned businesses has gone up from 15.6% to 18.4%. Can you tell me what percentage of that are visible minorities or women from indigenous communities?
I'm sorry, I don't have that stat, but I wanted to answer back on the question of the visible minorities that participated in our trade missions. And 41% are women of color on our trade missions.
Appreciate it.
I can't tell you what that 18. I'm sorry, I don't.
That's
have
okay.
that
That's okay.
data.
Listen, I remember a study back in 2014 when only 36% of the top management positions were in the corporate sector were women, which was growing. Ideally, we are looking forward to grow to above 50%. Out of 36%, there were only one percentage of them were women from visible minorities. Ms. Shorey, the same question. You do deal with a lot of women entrepreneurs, etc., and also women in board positions amongst the founders, amongst the senior executives. In your guess estimate, what percentage of them are women belonging to visible minorities or indigenous communities?
Certainly, I can speak to Sheboot because every single founder completes.
No, but the Shibu is a very specific program. I'm talking about the overall Ottawa picture of the sectors that Invest Ottawa deals in.
The overall Ottawa picture, it would be impossible for me to credibly say a particular percentage. I can say to you that 50% of the founders that we serve through our Small Business Enterprise Center hail, particularly during the pandemic period, from backgrounds that they are self-identified from equity-seeking groups.
Thank you.
On the technology side, it ranges anywhere from 15% to, I will say, 30 to 35%. In technology, we do not see as much diversity. We also have a slower step forward in terms of the number of technology women founders.
Thank you. I have got another question. I got limited time. The programs like Women Entrepreneurship Fund is good. I fully support it. It has been quite effective. But going forward, do you think that, federal government gives lots of subsidies, grants to various programs, for example, to support innovation and research and development? We give, we have got programs like STRED and IRAP. Do you think that if we carve out a portion of the amount already given instead of introducing new money, use the existing money that is going to the corporate sector as grant and subsidies, if we carve out a portion of it and increase the percentage of to incentivize women entrepreneurs or the businesses where women play a key role, do you think that will be effective?
Can I have a very short answer? Ms. Ari is out of time.
Incentives play a critical role as part of a larger suite of policy levers to drive forward on that goal. One of many.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes.
Oui, on sait que la plupart des...
We know that most women-owned companies that export tend to be smaller than companies that are comparable to them and that are owned by men, and that they're mainly in the service sector, especially professional and technical sectors, as well as in retail. How can you explain this to whichever witness?
Within Invest Ottawa, within our technology-based venture development programming, as I noted earlier, we serve scale-up companies that generate anywhere from $500 to $2 million in revenue. 77% of those companies have at least one woman co-founder and/or senior executive at the C-suite level. I think when you work as a community to equip and empower and inspire more women into tech, we need to build that STEM pipeline. Today, only 29% of STEM jobs are held by women, and less than 18 are in senior management. If we start at younger ages, K to 12, in that school age period, and inspire more women to pursue tech, pursue entrepreneurship with the right programming support, expertise, and investment opportunities, we absolutely are seeing a difference and driving that pipeline here in Ottawa for Canada. I'd love to share the data with you.
I'd like to add to that, if I may, Mr. Savard-Tremblay. That's why our project focused on tech women. We, right from the outset, we sought out women in STEM with STEM backgrounds who had technologies to share. And the reason why, one of the reasons why I believe that women tend to be more in the services, from what I heard through all the discussions we had in the roundtables, is that a lot of their services and innovative services have been born out of a need, personal need, whether it's for childcare, educating children, elder care. And the first trade mission, as I mentioned, was on elder care. And that's a lot of women who have are burdened with the responsibility of looking after aging parents as well as childcare. They come up with these innovations to help themselves, which translates into the needs of societies like Japan, for example, on the elder care technologies. So I think there's a lot of women in services there, truly, but the technology too is to develop something that they are passionate about, something that they came into faced up that they needed to find a solution for. And whether it's clean technology or healthcare technologies, that's where it almost starts at the root bottom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desjardins, for 2.5 minutes, please, and that'll be the end of this round.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Ms. Nakamura, did you want to just give you a bit more time just to finish your statement there you're making about some of the challenges to the last question?
Indeed. I myself looked after elderly parents. They lived with me, and so I know a lot of the problems that women who have those home responsibilities. I raised two children as a single mother and had two parents, aging parents into their mid-90s that I had to look after. So when I hear of these technologies coming out, I hear this type of story over and over again from women in tech, women with STEM backgrounds. And I can tell you that some of the entrepreneurs that we've looked after have scaled, have won awards around the world because with PhDs, master's degrees, scientists, they're incredible women. And I'm so proud to take them abroad to Asia to show them off. And I can tell you, and as I said to you earlier, 41% of our women are women from minority groups, visible minorities. And I guess the reason why we're going to Asia, so a lot of diaspora who are born over here of immigrant parents, they started businesses and they know what the markets need. So they've come up with good businesses that align with the market needs. So 41%, which is a pretty good stat, I think.
No, I would agree. That's a testament to, I think, your organization and the many of the organizations across our country that are doing this work of supporting women entrepreneurs. I know of projects that have been significant contributions to our economy, including the women-made and Indigenous-made Jolly Jumper, something that I think Canadians right across the country, particularly women, find great pride in. And I think it's important to mention that really interesting fact that I think you mentioned several times now, which is much of this incentive is born out of need. And I think that we have to find ways to better support women. So that's not only a reaction to economic or poverty circumstances to which they're accessing market solutions, but finding ways to support them before that point. Young women in particular, while they're in their places of education, school, post-secondary, that we get access to those groups earlier before it's too late. Do either of you want to spend time on how we support young women before it becomes a situation of need that gives them the access and courage and confidence before it becomes a dire situation?
I love this topic. Inspiration in the schools, role models. If you see her,
How do we get you in the schools?
Okay, thank you very much. I think this could go on for much longer, but we have other witnesses, and I have to suspend for a few minutes while we do a sound check on our witnesses. So I will suspend. Thank you very, very much for that valuable information. Maybe we'll have to have you back. We'll have to see.
It's a good idea.
We have more to...
We have with us now from the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce, Nancy Wilson, Chief Executive Officer. From the Fédération d'Agriculture du Québec, Valérie Fortier, President by video conference, and the Organization of Women in International Trade, Natalie Bradbury, President, OWIT Ottawa. Welcome to you all. We will start with opening remarks of up to 5 minutes. Ms. Wilson, you have the floor, please, for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nancy Wilson. I'm the founder and CEO of the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce, or CanWCC, as we call it. CanWCC is the only chamber of commerce in Canada that specifically represents and advocates for the 1.2 million women and non-binary business owners across the country. We have over 1,000 members across all provinces and territories. We also have an extensive partner network of entrepreneur support organizations and corporations that sell products and services that business owners need. We provide connection, community, and a national conversation to advance change. The Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, or WES, while not without limitations, has provided essential support and visibility to organizations like CanWCC. To drive genuinely inclusive economic growth, I believe the government must commit to long-term sustainable WES funding. Economic equity requires consistent and cumulative investment, and organizations like the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce deserve the same government backing as the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, especially when you consider that over the past decade, fewer than 5% of policies endorsed by the Canadian Chamber have even mentioned the words women or female. Approximately 18% of SMEs in Canada are majority owned by women, but of course only 11% of those businesses export. Women entrepreneurs often face limited access to capital, which hinders their ability to expand internationally. In addition to transportation, logistics, and customs fees, there are foreign exchange gains, losses, and expenses to navigate. While large corporations may mitigate currency risks through hedging, small and micro businesses typically lack these resources and can suffer significant losses. Small businesses are more likely to pay higher fees when they exchange smaller amounts of currency more often. They are also exposed to unfavorable exchange rates and other fees when they pay US dollar and other currency bills with credit cards. Government policies, or perhaps a lack thereof, around procurement further signal a lack of commitment supporting women entrepreneurs. While the federal government set a 5% procurement target for Indigenous suppliers starting in 2022, there is still no equivalent commitment for women-owned businesses, despite the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy being introduced in Budget 2018. My final comment relates to support for the self-employed. 80% of women, 50% of Black entrepreneurs, and 68% of Indigenous entrepreneurs are self-employed. Many of these individuals will become the SMEs of the future. If we want them to be successful exporters, we need to support them in developing the skills and strategies that enable them to do so from day one. CanWCC's advocacy is based on advancing economic equity for all Canadians. Our economy thrives when diverse perspectives are represented, valued, and integrated. Long-term funding, meaningful procurement targets, and accessible resources for the self-employed and women-owned businesses are essential to building a fairer, more inclusive marketplace. We stand ready to work hand-in-hand with government, industry, and community partners to break down barriers and to champion lasting, meaningful change. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fortier. Please, for up to 5 minutes.
Donc, bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Hello, Madam Chair, and hello, committee members. My name is Valérie Fortier, President of the Fédération des Agricultrices du Québec, which can be translated as Women in Agriculture, Federation of Quebec. I am co-owner of my family's dairy farm in Sainte-Valère, Quebec. I own 71% of the shares, and my father owns 29%. The Fédération des Agricultrices du Québec is the only agricultural organization in Quebec dedicated exclusively to women in this sector, and the only women's agricultural organization of its kind in Canada. It is made up of 10 regional farm women's unions, which take part in decisions affecting the agricultural sector and the status of women. The Federation is also a specialized group of the Union des Producteurs Agricoles. Thanks to an initial grant received from Economic Development Canada from 2019 to 2023, we have developed a women's agricultural entrepreneurship program called Dimension E. This program offers customized services to women entrepreneurs in the agricultural and forestry sectors. It strengthens the potential of each woman farmer by equipping and supporting them in their entrepreneurial endeavors. Through this program, women have access to a multitude of services such as training, free consultation hours with experts, entrepreneurial mentoring, and access to a support network for women entrepreneurs. In 2023, we received a second grant from Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada via the Women's Enterprise Strategy Ecosystem Fund, which enabled us to propel our program across Canada. Since the launch of this program, we have supported over 700 Canadian women farmers on their entrepreneurial journey. There are over 75,000 women farmers in Canada, representing 28.7% of all farm operators. We also observe that women are establishing themselves in agriculture in less traditional ways than men. The transfer of farms, whether related or not, or rather from a family member or not, remains the main entry point into agriculture. However, 44% of women prefer startups to farm transfers compared to 32% of men. I'd like to propose a recommendation to increase the number of women who own or co-own farm businesses. Our Dimension E program is there to equip women with leadership and management skills. But one of the major obstacles facing women entrepreneurs is access to financing. Research shows that fewer women in any field apply for financing. When they do, they are often judged according to different criteria than men and held to higher standards. A study by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business in December 2023 showed that 22% of applications from women are turned down, compared with an average of 15% for all businesses. What's more is that they generally receive less than men. Women entrepreneurs in agriculture face an additional obstacle in accessing financing after the age of 40. Most existing programs have been developed to support the new generation of women entrepreneurs, but studies show that women farmers are more likely to start a business after the age of 40. That is, after having raised a family and worked, usually unpaid, for several years in the family business. Adapting or creating programs to encourage financing for women over 40 would help increase the number of female farm business owners and ensure their autonomy. I'd like to propose a second recommendation. We are very grateful for the funding received by the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund. Without this major assistance, we wouldn't have been able to develop such a program and support so many women entrepreneurs. My recommendation would be for the government to continue funding projects for women farmers, considering that by 2024, women will represent over 50% of students in agricultural schools. Supporting women entrepreneurs in the agricultural field means supporting sustainable, equitable, and prosperous agriculture. It's about investing in Canadians' food quality, and it's also about investing in the food quality of the world, since Canada is the 8th largest exporter of agri-food products in the world. I'd like to thank you for having invited me to speak today.
Ms. Bradbury for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee and distinguished guests. Bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I will be doing my opening remarks in English, but I'll invite you to ask your questions in the language of your choice.
The unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples who have been here for millennia. Their culture and presence continue to nurture this land that we all benefit and enjoy. I am Natalie Bradbury, President of the Organization of Women in International Trade, Ottawa Chapter. CIIT Ottawa is a Canadian independent nonprofit corporation established in 2010, run by volunteers. CIIT Toronto was established in 1999. We are part of a growing international association of about 30 chapters worldwide and expanding steadily with another dozen in the works around the world, thus demonstrating the continuing and growing recognition of the importance of women's participation in trade globally. CIIT Ottawa members are trade professionals. They work in corporate finance, trade law, cross-border tax, defense procurement, freight forwarding, the foreign service, and other areas. CIIT supports women entrepreneurs by facilitating trade through skills development, working with our partner organizations such as the Forum for International Trade Training, an ISO certified organization, Canadian organization, which provides professional trade certification worldwide. CIIT also aims to contribute to trade policy development by conveying the concerns of women entrepreneurs to all levels of government and also to the World Trade Organization, UNCTAD, the International Trade Center, and others. CIIT Toronto also works with the Trade Facilitation Office of Canada, which helps SMEs from developing countries export to Canada. CIIT and TFOC also partner with CIIT at the international level and provide services through other CIIT chapters overseas. We collaborate with local businesses such as Invest Ottawa and Sheboot, providing their members with insights, knowledge, and guidance on international trade. We act as a bit of an international division or international conduit to help them understand the difficulties of international trade. We are grateful to be making our third appearance before this committee, and I want to take the opportunity to talk to you about what our members are saying about the important issue of trade and gender. The first time we spoke to your committee was in 2017, I believe, with the renewal of NAFTA. So I want to begin by recognizing and thanking the government for the WES and the groundbreaking policies, programs, and fundings it has provided. Annual share from the WEC, the World Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, has already been mentioned, so I won't go into that. EDC also notes that women-owned businesses contribute more than $117 billion to the Canada's economy. These are great indicators of progress. We look forward to seeing the evaluation of the WES so that direct results can be identified and next steps recommended. We also recognize that Canada has been a world leader in advancing women's interests through trade agreements, and we hope this will continue. Since 2017, Canada has been advancing trade and gender chapters and bringing inclusivity more broadly throughout the trade agreements. Progress at the bilateral level, such as the Canada-Chile FTA and CETA with the EU, can often go further than at the WTO, but both tracks are needed to build awareness and make progress internationally. CIIT also acknowledges that the Trade Advisory Services Can Export Program and trade missions organized by the TCS and the financial services offered by EDC have had positive outcomes for women exporters. The whole-of-government approach to enabling women to become full participants in the economy and trade has been truly foundational. Several witnesses have already touched upon important domestic issues, so I will be focusing more specifically on trade issues. The first important point I would like to make is that trade is complicated and it's difficult. Professionals spend their whole careers working in trade fields such as those I mentioned earlier. Plus, there's a whole army of specialists working strictly on the chapters and MTAs. We're talking about tariff lines, HS codes, TRQs, rules of origin, trade and services, SPS, TBT. The list goes on and on. It is no wonder that business people are surprised when they look to trade internationally. So we recommend that new exporters look first to building connections with trade experts, such as with CIIT in Canada and our chapters overseas. Some of our colleagues in the organizations that I've presented have some knowledge, but also that they reach out to government services which are there to help them on their journey. I would like to highlight a few successful women exporters.
Ms. Bradbury, sorry to interrupt. 5 minutes is up, and the committee members have a lot of questions. If you could save your closing remarks and possibly be able to answer some questions, it would be appreciated. Thank you very much. Mr. Martel, for 6 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here with us today, of course. My first question will be for both of you. I don't know which one of you will be able to give me an answer, but given the economic challenges that make it difficult for many Canadian women to save money to start up a new company, how can we learn from Sweden, for example, where there are more women that start a company on their own savings, knowing that 31% of entrepreneurs in Sweden are women, but we're only at 19% in Canada. So whoever would like to answer that question, you may go ahead. Yep, go ahead. So firstly, I'd like to say that in all studies, we've seen that women rely highly on family support. They don't like to take out loans, or at least much less than men, and this is well known in Canada as well. So they like to rely upon their own financial means and their family and friends. So that's the case, like I said, in Canada as well. What we're trying to do in Canada is, what we've seen in Africa is that women find themselves far too often in the informal sectors. And we see it in Canada too. Many women are sole proprietors and they're not considered as a full-fledged company and not a corporation. So what we're trying to do in Canada as well is encourage them to formalize this process so that in the future banks, for example, be able to offer them loans. So it's great to do this with family support and personal means, but it's also a good thing to enter into a more formalized system to be able to benefit from all that is offered. Thank you. Do we have any other responses to this?
Ça va?
Yes? I think your mic is off. You're on mute.
Merci.
Still learning how to use Zoom.
Merci.
I always forget. So actually, over 80% of women actually start their businesses using personal credit. And that's actually identified as a problem because they, they incur all of this personal debt. It tends to hurt their credit score when they should be building their business credit score. And then when they go to when they build up their business a bit, they go to approach a bank for a business loan. They may have some good revenue coming in, some good cash flow, but because their businesses tend to be in sectors where they don't have a lot of actual physical collateral to provide, the bank will often ask them for a personal guarantee. They check their credit score, and their personal credit score is not so good because they've got all this personal debt sitting on them. So, there's always the question of, can you self-finance your business? It's kind of the ideal. If you have this nest egg, that's a great thing. But it's a double-edged sword, I would say.
Merci.
Thank you. Ms. Fortier, the next question is for you, but if you'd like to add anything initially to this question.
Si je peux me permettre,
Oui.
In terms of women farmers, usually women start up companies later on in life. Firstly, they're going to raise their children, or, they work with their partner, and they're not necessarily making money on this initially. And then later on, they don't necessarily have credit because this work wasn't what we could call visible. And so they don't necessarily have the ability to go get financing. And that's why in the agricultural industry, it's a lot more difficult to start a company after 40 years old because there's a lot of funding being invested into into young women. And so usually this funding only applies to those under the age of 40, and so those over that age struggle. And many times these women will give the company to someone younger. and many times the main farm is not able to receive financing. So they go to the financial institutions and they say that you don't have enough time left to work, but these are so they create these companies and then actually transfer them to younger owners. Thank you, Ms. Fortier. 26 seconds. So I wanted to ask you another question. What impact have you seen on women farmers and in the agricultural industry because of high tax levels? The lower their revenue, and we see this especially with temperature changes, climate change, rain issues, revenue is lower. And so this means that companies are becoming less and less sustainable. And this creates a lot of difficulties, especially for SMEs. But it also poses a problem for large companies. When you're in a remote region, you have to think about transportation costs, and this just simply adds an additional cost to companies that are trying to become efficient.
That was an extra minute there. Thank you so much. Ms. Fortier for 6 minutes, please.
Alors là, c'est l'autre, Madame Fortier.
So now we're on to the other Ms. Fortier. Don't worry, Ms. Fortier. I know we also have a Ms. Fortier who is a witness. But I'm happy to meet you, and maybe our families were related far back. But I'd like to sincerely thank you for being present here today, because this is a very important study. Firstly, the goal of this study is to see what the government is doing well and what the government can do better. Your experience and expertise allows us to see what we can offer as a federal government. That being measures that increase women's participation in the economy and a more fair participation. So I'll begin with Natalie Badbury. I was very happy to see you here today. You were talking about women who can be an inspiration, and maybe we could get into that. But since we've been doing this study, I've had the question, can we go beyond 16% of our entrepreneurs being women? And if we can, how can we favor this more? So if you could get into that for me, please.
Merci, Madame Fortier.
Thank you, Ms. Fortier. Yes, absolutely. We have just begun. We've done a lot to date, especially with the WES, all the different funding and programs. And then what matters is the whole of government approach. All of this has been helpful. And I can see that now we're really seeing the momentum of this, and it will only continue. When I look at women immigrants, for example, I am a first-generation immigrant. At our organization, 3 out of 10 of us are first-generation immigrants. Another 3 out of 10 that are people of color. And so we all have our own perspectives. And we're all very open, very well-educated. And when people are well-educated, they sometimes do things differently than immigrants of the past who may have purchased a franchise to carry on the franchise. There are great examples of women who are doing great things. So Anita Tandon, for example.
And she wanted to create safe, plastic-free containers for daughters' lunches and snacks after BPA was considered a health hazard. Not finding them, she created her own. She's a health scientist. So she created stainless steel containers that are now sold in Canada, the US, and New Zealand. This is retail. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, c'est de la commerce en détail.
Mr. Savard-Tremblay, this is retail, but it's very high-tech retail. I apologize, I don't have enough time, but what you're sharing is great. If you have any other examples that you'd like to share with the committee, of course, we'd like to hear them. Ms. Wilson, I think you'll be able to answer this question as well, given that you have representatives throughout the country. So do you have an answer to this question as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think from my perspective, I have great optimism that those numbers can go up. I think there's a couple different things that we need to do. So I have a lot of answers to this question. I'll focus on one. I think we need to look beyond gender, and we need to realize that when we look at equity and equality and advancing those topics, we can't look at one silo or one issue in a vacuum. So we have the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. We have the Black Entrepreneurship Program, the LGBTQ. We really need to start looking at underserved and equity-deserving groups and develop programs and sustainable long-term funding for advancing equity and equality en masse, like for all of those groups. I mean, I started CanWCC in 2018. 2 years later, we're hit by COVID, and it felt so false to me to continue to be talking about gender equity and equality when it wasn't just women. Certainly women were pounded pretty hard in COVID, but so many equity-seeking groups were suffering.
And I'm going to have to cut you off because unfortunately my time's running up, but I just wanted to inform members that I'm submitting a motion to the clerk so we can study it at a later time because we have currently guests, but I just wanted to give a motion to extend the study, and you will receive this motion.
Thank you.
Let's continue on here for the moment if we can. Mr. Savard-Tremblay, for 6 minutes, please.
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. My first question will be for Ms. Fortier. Ms. Fortier, the witness in this case. So I'm very happy that you are here because women farmers live in a very unique situation. I represent Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte, and in my riding there are a lot of female farmers, so I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. October 8th, your organization published the results of a poll that you did for the Léger administration that said that many female farmers deal with high levels of workload and stress. And part of this is because they are dealing with a high number of tasks. They have identified 5.1 different roles that they're playing in their company. Do you think that this is the same thing for male farmers? And if there's a difference, why does it exist?
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you. So there is a difference. In terms of these companies pertaining to manual work, it's very similar. Women usually take care more things at home in terms of accounting, working with the children, taking them to their extracurriculars, and other things outside of the home. In this study, we found that in many cases, temperature changes affect women more greatly because they're the ones that have to arrange all of the scheduling, when they're going to be doing their harvesting, for example. And so this is a mental load for women. And women are also dealing with the labor force for the company. They're going to be taking care of employees. So the question now is, what can we do to help these female farmers, especially in terms of this overload of tasks? Well, that's one of the requests that we made in the past. We wanted to find a way to encourage the government to support, to find workers that can support these women, because 27% of women are co-owners of companies, and men are often working externally. So women are handling everything in the home as well. So the question was, are we able to bring in foreign workers to support these women also at home? Because we know that there are not enough daycare services for women in these regions. So, but without funding, it's difficult to implement this. In Bas-Saint-Laurent, we've tried to implement this, but it has been complicated. So firstly, we want to be able to have foreign workers to support women with these tasks around the home. And so it's this mental load. To what extent does that have an impact on female farmers? Well, it's not just a mental load. Women can find themselves rather isolated as well, and the suicide rates among women farmers is becoming higher and higher. So the more isolated they become, the more difficult it is, and sometimes it can have dramatic consequences. Do I still have time, Madam Chair? 2 minutes? Another interesting number in your poll is on younger female farmers from 18 to 35 years old. So for 94% of them, the main challenge is the number of tasks. 92% said work-family balance. So these are pretty high numbers, but the numbers are a little bit higher for younger female entrepreneurs and farmers. How can you explain this? Well, usually women try to really prove themselves and show that they're able to take over the company, for example, from their family or the company of a non-family member. These numbers are a lot lower amongst men because they're not trying to prove themselves as much. It's not necessary for them necessarily, but these women find themselves having to show so much more proof of their ability to run these companies, show their physical ability too for the manual work. And you've said that women are trying to prove themselves more. Why is this? Is it because of prejudice in the field? Is it specific to this field? Does it go deeper than that?
Answer, please.
Je vous dirais que l'éducation en est pour.
Well, I'd say that it's highly linked to education.
Thank you. Mr. Desjardins for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. To Ms. Bradbury, I understand that you haven't been able to complete your opening remarks. I yield my time to you should you wish to use that time to complete your important testimony.
Thank you so much. I guess I should first start by talking about challenges along the way. There are some really excellent stories of successful women exporters. But first, I'll talk about the challenges. So first of all, knowledge about exporting. So as I mentioned above, exporting and importing is a complicated business. Many of our members and partners have mentioned that business women are not aware of the government programs available to them. So we would recommend more efforts at coordination with trade associations, including OIT, would help to reach more companies about the opportunities and benefits of working with the TCS, with reaching out, benefiting from CAN Export, promoting trade missions, and the EDC, etc. So we stand ready to be a partner with the government in promoting these opportunities. Also, there are misconceptions and bias. There's systemic barriers. So one of our businesswomen told us she says there's a great analogy. Men's football have protective equipment to protect their players, helmets, shoulder pads, etc. To open up football to women and using men's safety equipment with no modifications and receiving the same level of safety is short-sighted. So women need systems that fit their needs to reach their desired outcome. So the programs and services, whether it's in banking, whether it's in high tech, when you think of AI is the current problem, when you're looking at government programs, a lot of them, it prevents women from fully participating in international trade. If women want to go on trade missions, but it's in sectors that are underserved by women, you're going to have less women going on these trade missions. So those are some examples. For small businesses, ventures in the early stages of export, can export was mentioned as being helpful. But this year, they're so far behind in their processing that it's hard to plan marketing campaigns. So they're still processing applications submitted until May 3rd. So if you can backdate expenses, that's great. But if you don't know if you're approved, are you going to take on the expenses when you don't even know if you're going to be approved? So they should hasten the approvals process. That would be a recommendation, such as issuing denials earlier, or they should create mini rounds of approvals. You know, do them like month by month, like tranche by tranche. Another thing is better networking. Many businesswomen have told us that they need better networking. So in other words, more specialized by market or by industry sector, but also to include trade professionals in this networking. And so we're, with Ottawa and with Toronto, are ready to assist with more networking. So the other thing is we've also brought up big business. Somebody mentioned that. And the Trade Team Canada approach. With other countries, it's actually, I think it's Germany and France, it's actually the business associations, like the French Business Association in Hong Kong when I was living there. It's them that organized the business delegations. It wasn't the federal government. So this could be an innovative approach that could form part of their responsible business conduct strategy. We need to be shifting from a competition mindset to a collaboration and partnership mindset. Just as in the U.S., we all have to be in it together. It really has to be a collaboration. Should this become standard practice, this would help up-and-coming Canadian businesses, such as women-owned businesses and underserved groups, to succeed on their growth journey, but also to benefit from the experience and knowledge of larger, successful Canadian businesses. If I have time, I'd like to mention one interesting example. So a former Ottawa company called Newbridge, a friend of ours, he was a manager there for the Asia Pacific, and one of his clients in Indonesia was having problems. And he said, look, I've got my best Canadian engineer. I'm going to bring my best Canadian engineer to solve this problem. He brought along a woman engineer. And he says, look, this person can solve this problem quickly. This is a way, he understood that by bringing the right person, who's a woman, but she was an engineer, she solved the problem for them. This is a way that and there was another example I could give in Ecuador about another company, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think that speaks to the immense skill and ability. What struck me in your testimony was a couple of things, and I think I'd like to reiterate them to you so I can practice my active listening and hopefully the active listening of our committee to what is really important recommendations that you've made. One relating to the fact that women's systems are needed. Many of the systems, you used a very good example. I was on Veterans Affairs Committee before, and this was something women veterans came forward and said, why is it that we are wearing men's military equipment when it's about our safety? This was a serious issue that I found it really struck me. And you're saying the same thing when it comes to equipping women for business, making sure that they're equipped with the tools that they need, not just inheriting the tools that have been largely developed by men through systems that are largely predominantly developed and still occupied by men. Speed. You spoke about speed as a process that's important to ensuring the success of women entrepreneurs and women who are participating in these systems. There could be the same regulations, but quicker systems. I can hear that. the networking piece, that women are often disenfranchised from being able to access vast networks, professional networks that often exist and are probably multinational as well. You yourself are quite an exception. I read your biography. You're a good example and role model for many women across our country in terms of your immense contribution to the international space. And then one of the other ones was cooperation over competition. This strikes, I think, a deep chord with many, many groups that are marginalized in the economy. We can, in fact, do better work when we work together. That work can be multiplied, and that investment can also be multiplied, but even better, the return to Canadians can be multiplied. So thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gray for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here today. And my first questions are for Nancy Wilson. And I was really listening intently to your opening statement and the challenges that your women entrepreneur members are facing. And you went into describing higher fees, unfavorable exchange rates, higher credit card fees, and all of these really add to the expenses of small businesses. And I know even for myself, when I had a business, we didn't use a customs broker because we weren't big enough to do that, and so then the courier companies were the broker. We would put things on our credit card, so you sort of get hit on that side. But then on the other side, I remember being very shocked looking at the credit card processing fees that we also had because we were a small business. And so the question that I wanted to ask you was, we know that the Liberal Party of Canada economic advisor to the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who sits on the board of Stripe, had said, Stripe has said that they would not be honoring the credit card reduction that will be happening here in Canada. And you represent businesswomen who many are small businesses. And so do you believe that all payment processors should be passing on the savings to businesses?
I hadn't heard that, and I certainly do. I certainly do. I think, Stripe, well, I won't speak about Stripe in particular, but I think that, doing business by credit card is ubiquitous nowadays. Any kind of e-commerce has to be done by credit card. And so the fees for small businesses absolutely have to be minimized because they're essentially a tax on small business. And an entry fee, certainly a barrier. I'm an accountant, so I know a lot about like foreign exchange fees and all of those other credit card fees. And when we talk about lowering barriers to international trade, lowering barriers to entry, all of these fees add up. It's death by a million cuts.
Thank you so much for that. I wanted to move on to something else. We've heard a fair amount of testimony at a variety of committees with respect to the capital gains tax. And so I wanted to ask you, with the capital gains tax increase by the Liberal government, will this make it easier or more difficult for women entrepreneurs to access capital?
I'm not sure if it'll have an actual significant impact. Women, in terms of accessing capital, in terms of, let's say, venture capital, women are struggling to get more than 4%, let's say in a good year, 5%. So the idea that new legislation is going to make it more difficult, there are so many other systemic barriers that need to be overcome before we take into account capital gains tax as a significant factor. So thank you. So many of my members are self-employed. It's just not a huge factor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to move on to Valerie Fortier, please. And a similar question that I have for you is I'm interested in the impact of the government's capital gains tax on family farms. Now, we know that the president of Wheat Growers Association, the Wheat Growers Association, told the Finance Committee that the Liberals' capital gains tax hike, quote, inadvertently targets farmers who produce food to meet domestic and global demand and as small businesses that are family-run, unquote. Would you agree with these comments?
Briefly,
Effectivement,
please.
l'augmentation des taxes.
Yes, we're seeing the effects of the capital gains tax increases, especially with seniors. The tax burden in municipalities is changing. And so the tax burden is becoming more and more significant for producers. Our revenues on our harvests are not necessarily higher, but they're still asking for more. So increasing taxes on revenue without taking into account, the decrease in the prices that we're able to set on our produce is making it difficult for us, and we've lost market parts, shares of the market. So,
Merci, madame.
For cutting you off. It seems like there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions and not enough time. Mr. Sidhu, please.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for being with us here today for this very, very important study. As we know, small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and our government wants to make sure that we continue to stand with small businesses, and that's why we lowered the small business tax rate from 11 to 9%. And just a few weeks ago, since we're talking about credit card fees, we signed a deal with Visa and MasterCard to lower that by 27% to help small businesses with their operating expenses. And so we want to ensure that we continue standing with small businesses. And to the witnesses here, I wanted to turn to Ms. Wilson. I wanted to ask, have you been part of the government's women entrepreneurship strategy? And can you tell me how this strategy has supported your members?
Yes, we have been part of the strategy. We've been involved in the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. We've worked with them over the years. They've been hugely influential. We also received an ecosystem fund grant. We developed a program that's currently going on right now. It's in pilot phase, where we use an AI-enabled simulation software for women who are looking for venture capital financing for their business to practice, their pitch and the question-answer period following a pitch to really hone their skills. So WES has been hugely influential in helping us to help our members. And we're very hopeful that we can continue to access funding to build those programs, as well as to hopefully access funding to directly support our members as entrepreneurs.
Thank you. And if I can turn to Ms. Bradbury, in terms of some of the challenges that you're seeing with women-owned business or women-led businesses, if there's three things you can do in terms of funding for support in terms of programs. Is it on the trade side? Is it on the operating expense side? Like, what would you suggest to members here, based on your experience, what we need to focus on and prioritize?
I guess the first thing I would do is, in terms of funding, I would create a network opportunity to bring in, do far more events, connecting our women in Canada by sector and by market to our chapters abroad and elsewhere. Also, to learn from the Canadian women business owners, also to learn from them more, so that when we submit to the WTO and elsewhere, that we can bring their experiences to other countries, but also so that the women that are on both sides, both the chapters in Canada and the chapters overseas, so that they can learn from each other, from when they can sell to each other. We also participate in the Global Summit of Women every year. It was in Spain this year, and it's in Berlin next year. We bring women along. We'd love to create a big Canadian delegation of Canadian women to go to the Global Summit of Women in Berlin in 2025.
And I know through the Indo-Pacific strategy, we have our Team Canada trade missions that Minister Ng has been taking to some of the fastest growing regions in the world. And part of those delegations are women-owned businesses or women leaders in business. And we want to ensure that women also have access to these new growing markets through our trade commissioner services. And so they're providing a great service to those that want to trade with the rest of the world. And I would encourage for those watching at home that the minister will be taking a couple more delegations to the Indo-Pacific region. And so if you're interested, look up the Trade Commissioner Services and please submit to your application, because what I've heard on the ground, speaking with many of the businesses that have been on these trade delegations, that it enables them to grow into new markets that they've never been a part of. It's helped them acquire businesses in those markets, and there's many success stories that come out of it, and that's why we want to ensure that we continue doing these Team Canada trade missions through our Indo-Pacific strategy. Maybe I can turn to Madame Fortier online. Madame Fortier, same type of questioning in terms of priorities that you think the government should be focused on. Is there certain programs that we should be funding more of, in your opinion?
C'est sûr qu'on aimerait pouvoir.
We want to be able to continue to support women through the Dimension E program that we established. We have supported over 100 female farmers in Canada at this point. So we're offering free consultation with notary publics, marketing advisors, amongst other professionals. So it would be beneficial for us to have more grants to be able to support our Dimension E program and to be able to continue with the momentum on the progress that we've made thus far.
Monsieur Savard-Tremblay for 2 minutes, and then Mr. Desjardins for 2 minutes, and that's all the time we have.
Oui, merci. Alors,
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to continue with Ms. Fortier. March 26, Femmes d'Affaires du Québec announced the launch of the Maya program for inclusive growth in Canada. This project aims to supply information and network and advice to women who are entrepreneurs who would like to become entrepreneurs. And so they told us that they are, or rather that Quebec is actually ahead of other provinces in this field because of the system in Quebec, and they have intervened more than other provinces. What would you say about that? Well, yes, so our organization is the only structured organization in Canada throughout the country. And so, yes, I would say that we are ahead of other provinces in that sense. So Ontario actually came and requested that we support them through our Dimension E program. Also, the Yukon has approached us. So different provinces have come to speak with us to learn from us and to implement similar programs, or rather our program, throughout the country. That's all my questions for now.
Mr. Desjardins, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you again to all the witnesses for being present for this study. It's important that as a country we look at imperative ways that will guarantee the increase of women entrepreneurs and a deep integration within our domestic economy. But of course, our international economy needs to see a much more significant increase in participation of women in these systems. It's clear that we have many of these systems are working, but they could obviously be better. There's a lot that can be learned from the testimony you made today. I do want to turn to Ms. Fortier related to her work in agriculture. This is from Alberta. We have a huge amount of agricultural producers. Of course, those challenges are quite unique in the sense that right near us are Saskatchewan and parts of central Alberta have these historically large, immense farms. And these large, immense farms are inherited often and have this inheritance mechanism that's passing land down to the next generation and after that and so forth. that allows for, I think, the guaranteed participation of families in access to that kind of business. But for new individuals, women that want to get involved in agriculture, those who haven't had the opportunity, such as yourself, Ms. Fortier, to be raised in an agricultural family. I was raised in a beef-producing family, and so I know the advantages that come along being raised in a ranch. You know, what it means to have calving season, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Something that you get in your bones and something you can't really leave. It can't really leave your body. It's part of you. It's part of your DNA when you're a producer. But for those who want to get involved in the industry, those who want to get their foot in the door, for lack of better words, what would you advise women who want to get involved in this, who don't necessarily share our agricultural upbringing?
Ben, c'est sûr que,
If we can have
je dirais,
brief answers.
Au niveau des agricultrices du Québec, on
When it comes to female farmers in Quebec, we have several programs to help women start up these companies, to support existing companies, or to pass down companies. So we've started to travel for this. We've been invited to a pan-Canadian event. So we'd like to really create a program for the entire country, and we're offering them support, working with real estate agencies, with offering them tax support, for example. Oftentimes it's difficult for them to find land. I'm sure it's the case in other provinces as well. So again, anything related to lawyers and accounting. There can be different regulations depending on where you're located, and it can be different from traditional trade regulations. So that's why we have created programs to support female farmers. And over the last 20 years, we've gone from 4% of women who were co-owners or owners to 27% of women who are owners or co-owners today. So this is a great improvement in Quebec, and if we would be able to transfer this or allow this type of evolution in other provinces as well, that would be truly our pleasure to create a program that could help other provinces.
Very valuable witnesses. It was an immense amount of information. So thank you all for being with us today. I move adjournment of the meeting.